Today I'll share 10 facts about the Portuguese city of Lisbon. A bucket list destination for many, Lisbon is renowned for its picturesque streets, fascinating history, and as an affordable vacation option compared to some other European destinations. Let's get to it. Number 1. Lisbon is the second oldest capital city in Europe. Inhabited since 1200 BC, Lisbon has been around for thousands of years. Founded by the Phoenicians, it was controlled at different times by the Greeks, the Carthaginians, the Romans, Germanic tribes, specifically the Suebi, an Islamic Caliphate, Norwegian Crusaders, Moorish Almoravids, and finally, Portugal. Lisbon predates other modern European capitals by centuries, with the exception being Athens. And while Lisbon wasn't the birthplace of democracy like Athens was, it was the staging point for the Age of Discovery. That's a pretty big deal. Today, Lisbon is the westernmost capital on the continent and the only one along the Atlantic coast. There are 550,000 people living in the city, with 3 million in its metropolitan area. What are some of the historical gems of Lisbon, you may ask? Check this out. Number 2. Lisbon is home to 2 UNESCO World Heritage Sites. At the top of every top places to visit in Lisbon articles I read, Belém Tower ranks at the top of must-see places in the Portuguese capital. Officially known as the Tower of St. Vincent, it sits on what was once an island in the Tagus River. Built in 1515, it was the point for coming and going for the famed Portuguese explorers who set out to take sea routes to Asia. Since 1983, the tower has been a UNESCO World Heritage Site along with the close-by Jerónimos Monastery. Speaking of which, Jerónimos Monastery houses the tombs of some of Portugal's most famous people. Built in the early 1500s near the launch point of Vasco da Gama's first journey to Asia, the monastery houses the tombs of some of Portugal's most famous people, including da Gama himself, legendary poet Luís de Camões, and Kings Manuel I and John III. At one point, some of the most famous Portuguese were dying to get in there. Probably not my best joke. What's next? Number 3. Portugal and Lisbon were the birthplace of the Age of Discovery. The Age of Discovery, or the Age of Exploration, was a period from the 15th to the 17th century in which Europeans took to the seas and explored, colonized, and conquered regions across the rest of the world. At the center of it was Prince Henry the Navigator, whose fascination with Africa led him to sponsor voyages down the African coast. In addition to sponsoring early voyages, Henry is also credited with furthering knowledge of geography, map-making, and navigation. These early developments allowed Vasco da Gama to sail around Africa and find a route to Asia, Christopher Columbus to cross the Atlantic, and Ferdinand Magellan to circumnavigate the globe. The world as we know it became connected, for better or worse, during the Age of Discovery. And if you have discovered this channel and like what you found, be sure to connect by subscribing to Global Community and hitting the bell button. Moving on. Number 4. Lisbon is a fantastic tourist destination. Visited by millions each year, Lisbon is seen as a less expensive and just as satisfying place to visit compared to some of the more visited cities in Europe. Lisbon is a laid-back city with coastal vibes that's famous for its pastel buildings, cafe culture, and a unique vibe. Some of the must-see places to visit, not counting the UNESCO World Heritage Sites, include São Jorge Castle, which has existed long enough to see the Romans fall to the Visigoths, experience the fights between the Arabs and the Christians, survive Castilian sieges, and witness to the birth of the Age of Discovery. Since the 12th century, the castle has served as a royal palace, a military barracks, home of the National Archive, and now as a national monument and well-visited museum. Rocio Square has been one of the main centers of Lisbon since the Middle Ages. It has been the setting of popular revolts and celebrations, bullfights and executions. Today, it's the place where friends meet up to enjoy a beverage at a cafe or bar before attending the National Theatre located on the north side of the square. A monument built to celebrate Portuguese discoveries is the Monument to the Discoveries. Conceived in 1939 and rebuilt in 1960, it honors the contributions of Prince Henry the Navigator 500 years after his death. On either side of Prince Henry are 33 monarchs, explorers, cartographers, artists, scientists, and missionaries associated with the Portuguese Age of Discovery. Trolley cars were once the main way to get around in Lisbon. Most are gone now, but visitors can still enjoy a ride on Tramline 28, a route that takes you through the popular tourist districts of Alfama, Baixia, Estrela, and Graça, making it a great way to see many of Lisbon's most popular sites. Tourists generally take Tram 28 to the hilltop of São Jorge Castle to take in the panoramic views, but the line is used by locals for their daily commutes too. It can be a great chance to meet native Lisbonites, or Lisboners. Lisbonese? Number 5. Lisbon was destroyed by the 1755 earthquake. On November 1st in 1755, a powerful earthquake struck the coast of Portugal, devastating the city of Lisbon. To make matters worse, the offshore epicenter caused one of the worst tsunamis to ever hit Europe and destroyed Lisbon even further, leaving Portugal's largest city in ruins. 2 more tsunamis hit Lisbon over the next 3 hours, creating even more havoc. In all, between 12 and 50,000 people were killed in Lisbon alone, and over 90% of the buildings in Lisbon were either collapsed by the earthquake, flooded by the tsunami, or burned from fire. The first earthquake scientifically studied over a large area, it led to the birth of modern seismology and earthquake engineering. It also greatly affected Enlightenment philosophers such as Voltaire and Jean-Jacques Rousseau. But for the Portuguese, the catastrophe greatly weakened its empire, affecting its position as a global power. The only district not to be completely affected by the disasters was Alfama, which leads us to number 6. Alfama is the oldest neighborhood in Lisbon. Ranging from São Jorge Castle to the Tagus River, Alfama is the oldest and likely most popular neighborhood in Lisbon. Not completely destroyed by the earthquake due to being built on bedrock and being high enough above the sea level to not be affected by the tsunami, Alfama district is dotted with architectural landmarks, including some that date back to the city's Islamic past. The neighborhood is famous for its charming winding streets, amazing eateries, and Fadu clubs. Number 7. Lisbon was once the city of spies. Lisbon was a center of spying during World War II, with many secret agents from both sides operating under the cover of their diplomatic status. Portugal was neutral during the war, allowing diplomats to roam Lisbon streets looking for information. It was the location of many of World War II's most celebrated spies, such as 007 creator Ian Fleming, actor Leslie Howard, and British author Graham Greene, among many others. The paths of opposing spies crossed in hotel lobbies right across the Portuguese capital and all along a region also known as the Portuguese Riviera. Today, there is a Lisbon City of Spies tour you can go on to sleuth around the city. Number 8. Lisbon and San Francisco have a lot in common. The original plan was to highlight Lisbon's bridges, but after seeing the 25th of April bridge looking so strikingly similar to San Francisco's Golden Gate Bridge, I remembered both cities had trams and cable cars as public transportation. Then I got to looking to see what else the two cities have in common. Both reside on the west coast of their countries. Both were built on 7 hills. Both Lisbon and San Francisco were destroyed by major earthquakes. Lisbon in 1755 and San Francisco in 1906. Both cities are leaders in LGBT rights. Between the San Francisco 49ers and Lisbon's Benfica, both have football teams that were dynasties in their sport. Both teams even have similar color patterns for their uniforms. And both have world-class aquariums. Let's take a look at something Lisbon has that San Francisco does not. Number 9. Lisbon was the birthplace of Fadu. Fado, a musical genre that is distinctly Portuguese, originated in the Lisbon neighborhoods of Bairro Alto and Alfama. Traditionally associated with pubs and cafes, it is known for its expressive and thoughtful tones of sadness. Translated into English, the name Fado means fate. The singer sings of harsh realities of everyday life, sometimes with a sense of resignation, and at other times with hopefulness. The performance is generally enhanced with emotive bodily gestures and facial expressions and aims to evoke a sense of saudade, a Portuguese word without a direct translation to English but is similar to yearning. Can you imagine listening to a live performance of Fado in a Lisbon cafe or pub on a warm Saturday night? Put that on my bucket list. Number 10. Lisbon has unique restaurant times and great food. The 10th fact in this series will come from other YouTubers who share things that I may have missed. Let's look at the highlights, and of course, the link to each video will be in the description if you would like to check them out for yourself. In the Walter's World episode, 5 Things You Will Love and Hate About Lisbon, he shares that you will love the weather and how affordable both eating and shopping in the city are. For his hates, he warns that many restaurants in Lisbon are closed between 3 and 8 p.m., so you may get hungry if you go at the wrong time. Are they really closed between those times? If so, why? Let us know in the comments. In Drew Binsky's How Cheap is Lisbon episode, Drew begins in the Alfama district and tries the national dish bacalhau. The episode ends in Bairro Alto, where Drew experiences a woman singing Fado in a club. Thanks for living my bucket list, Drew. A fun fact he shares that I have to tell is that the people of Iran call oranges Portugals, because the Portuguese were the first to bring them there. And finally, Mark Wiens tried the cuisine in his episode Portuguese Food Tour, Full Day of Eating in Lisbon, Portugal. Among the things he eats includes pastéis de bacalhau, beef samosa, and bakra piri piri, enjoying each. Included in this episode is his visit to the famous Lisbon Oceanarium, one of the greatest saltwater aquariums in the world. He sees fish and puffins, and I see it's time to end the episode. Have you spent time in Lisbon? Would you like to? Please share your Lisbon experiences or hopes to visit in the comments. Until next time, thanks for watching, and please keep coming back on our journey to experience our global community.